Okay, I think we'll start. We're leaving the door open for any stragglers or people that may come in a bit later. I think I'm probably introducing myself to people who already know who I am. My name's Rebecca Conway. I work here with Cultural Collections. It's my privilege to do so. And before I start the proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal country, Gadigal of the Eora Nation. They're unceded lands. Something to think about as we go into the weird kind of celebrations we have around Australia Day and the very vexed celebrations. So I've invited Sana to speak to us today in the context of the exhibition which is upstairs on level 4, which is an exhibition of Ömie nioge barkcloth. Sana was involved in the very first institutional exhibition of Ömie nioge in Australia, barkcloth, which was held at the NGV in 2009. And I thought who better than to speak to us about her experience working with collections as a cultural practitioner in this space as we go into what is the last week of that show. It's been up for about a year. So I think a lot of people in the room probably know who Sana is, and I won't introduce her in detail. I will just say that she is a mentor to many who work in the cultural space. Many refer to her as Aunty Sana for that reason, both culturally and because of her long career in the area and the way in which she's educated and shared knowledge with many people about how we work in that space. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Aunty Sana Balai to talk to us about her career trajectory, if you like. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by, and I'll probably start in, if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to say the acknowledgement in my language. Ko halen ko hatra maroi tra arabna te tu rahan rake. Ko halen ka hauchichi kapan tre ra chuno no panien ti lahaka panate karen de tut la no kurmam ni mamru. I would like to acknowledge, excuse me. Tend to forget it. And my glasses. I will get there. I would like to start by acknowledging the, as you've already done, but from as a visitor to someone's land, it is also very important that I pay respect and also acknowledge the traditional landowners. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodian of the land which we meet today, the Gargai people of the Eora Nation. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional custodian of the land which I prepared this lecture, the Yugumbe and the Yugra people. I pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Also would like to pay my respect to all the elders who are here and everyone who's here as part of this in-person lecture. And I also like to thank Rebecca, if I may use that name, for allowing me the space to come and tell my story in this journey here. To set the scene, I will start by starting from my humble beginning. I come from a little island called Buka, which is tiny speck there. Now, Buka is part of the Solomon Island, and we are matriarchal. Even though we're Papua New Guinea largely is patriarchal, whereas Buka is matriarchal, which is the woman is the head of the family or the owner of the culture. Now, I am one of the 7 children, and I could have chosen a more glamorous pictures of my family. But for me, I don't want to sugarcoat everything. This is who we are and what we are. Even though we may look rugged, we are very highly academic. I am one of the 7 children from my father's second marriage. His first marriage was to a Chinese woman, and they divorced under the white law, interracial marriage. So my brother and my mother brought, their mother brought the children to here, Brisbane. And then 15 years later, my father reconnected with his son when my father came to train in Sydney. The last job he had was, he was the Assistant District Commissioner for the Lands Title Commission. So that was a humble beginning. Now, I went to school in the 70s. And in the 70s, I got advised by the guidance officer at that time, leading up, I think it came as far as the 80s, that if you went to high school, you had to get permission from your father if you wanted to be anything other than a typist, stenographer, teacher, or a nursing aide. And I've always wanted to be a pilot because my brother wanted to be a pilot, and his son, one of my brother, wanted to be a pilot. So he sent a form for my father to sign, and my father said no, because pilot then was known as a dangerous job. So I thought that I'd try my luck, and my father politely said no, and I said, Dad, that's not what you taught us. Anyway, the first college I went to was Woodall Agricultural College in Rabaul. I soon learned that, you know how they say you either have a green thumb or a brown thumb. Mine was black. I killed every plant. So I ran away. And while I was at college, I did my own research, and I learned that BCL had a program where Bougainville Copper had the program whereby you either became an apprentice or cadetship. So I then joined the program 47 years ago on the 18th of this month. That was a couple of days ago. I became a trainee laboratory technician, and there was a program that said you had to do 3 months at college, 6 months, and then for 3 years, and then you go to Lay School of Applied Science. Fortunately for me, I only did it in 3 months, and when I was so determined to prove that I was as good as my brothers. So I was so determined, and that's how I ended up. That's my old job. And then I came to Australia during the war, Bougainville crisis, as we all know, and I couldn't get a job in my field because either I was not trained in Australia, or I was not I was a woman. How would I know anything about science? So I went to Swinburne University to do engineering and industrial science, but rather than do full 5-year course, I only did 1 year as an instrumentation, with specializing in AAS, which is atomic absorption spectrophotometry, gas chromatography, and DCP plasmas. And even I got that, I couldn't get a job. The last job interview I went to, I got told that my name would be a deterrent. So I came home, and my husband, Brian, said, there's a job coming at the museum. They're wanting a Pacific Islander. And I said, you know, I hated that. And all I can say is, be careful what you wish for. I went for an interview as Mrs. Cleaver, because I knew that the first time I got rejected a number of times because I was using the name Balai. So I went in as Mrs. Cleaver. My birth name is actually Susana Riana Tangre, and Balai is my father's name. So when I went to the museum, I went as Mrs. Cleaver. And as we were walking out, one of the interviewers said, by the way, that's Susan have a name, or Mrs. Cleaver have a name. And I said, Sana. So from August 1997, I became that person, and this is who I am now today. Now, a change from, as I was trying to say, to go from science to art. For me, it was a necessity. I was wanting a job. I went into the museum with this job, not knowing anything in terms of art. For me, I could not truly understand what art meant from a Western concept, but from art, from a cultural concept, you do not separate art from a person. How do you separate dancing from singing to carving? Everything is interconnected, and that's how I entered the museum, and that's I went into the National Gallery of Victoria as an assistant collection manager and an art handler. And one of the things we did was glamorous as it is, as the title, just packing and packing. And I remember when I walked in the first Monday I got in, I got asked, so I walked into the space and I saw all this art form. And for me, it was not the art form, it was me seeing my great-grandmother and all the women, all the men carving. And for me, that gave me a different understanding of what art was to what is known as art in here, back home we know as culture. And that's how I made sense of the whole thing. So I joined the museum in 1997 and then went into when we moved the collection, and then when the job description, Victoria at that time had the law that if you had more than 5 contracts, you would have to be permanently. That's okay. Come inside. At that time, Victoria had the law that if you were there for 5 contracts, you can be permanently done. Unfortunately, they didn't. So I went back as a volunteer to finish the project. Now, to the real thing now. Art of the Ömie, a contested space. Why I call it a contested space is because a lot of lines was crossed when we staged the exhibition, and I apologize if I'm going to be a bit teary in this case space because it's 14 years ago, and a lot of pain and everything is involved in this space. When we, David Baker and Drusilla Modeska pitched us this program, this exhibition. Sorry, to give you a Ömie is, you probably know, Ömie is this area here. And where it stands in, there it is. Now, Ömie people, there are about 2,000 of them. And the neighboring clan or tribe, which is larger, is Orokaiva. And traditionally, they were either friends or enemies. So the Ömie people, when David told us about this program, this art exhibition that they wanted to come and exhibit here, the challenge we faced was we wanted to go and actually shoot the documentary on Oro province. Who wouldn't want to go and shoot a film there? We wanted to go and shoot the actual video in that space. We got told that we could not go because it was a dangerous place and that the Ömie people didn't speak Pidgin, English, or Motu. And I said, I may not speak fluent Motu, but I understand enough to speak Motu, understand the Motu, and I can speak a little bit. But Pidgin, I'm sure they speak Pidgin. It was only when we do the due diligence, because what they did was they formed those who were dealing with, David and Drusilla, they have formed a company called NAMIS Corporation. Now, when we, as those who work in art, when you do an exhibition, you do due diligence. So when we did the due diligence, we were trying to look for where NAMIS Corporation was registered. We couldn't find it. So I then rang David and I said, look, the exhibition coordinator has asked me to find out if you can direct us to see where NAMIS Corporation is registered, because we need to do the due diligence as required. And unfortunately for me, he came back to me and he goes, how dare you question me? All the other institutions have accepted what I've got, and how dare you? And he used the N-word. And I said, rather than be offended, I knew I was in a unique place. I either fight back but that would not do any justice to what I was trying to bring into that space, to bring the Pacific space into the space that that displayed Asia and European art. So I wanted to bring in the Pacific space in that space. And I said to him, yeah, I'm a nigger. But guess what? You shake the nigger's hands. And we hugged, and I had to move forward from there. And even though it hurt, for me, I was also mindful that those behind me needed someone to break the walls out there so they could come in and work and do the job. And that's what my main drive had been. Now, to get back to the real story now, sorry. Ömie barkcloth, the original Ömie barkcloth comes from those of you who have read my essay in the catalog book, Ömie, Wisdom of the Mountain, Art of the Ömie. I opened my essay with a story of the original, how barkcloth originated from the community. Now, there was a man called Mina and a woman called Sucho. Some people may refer to her as Sucha, but I'm going to use the name that I got told and the permission that I got to use this name, Sucho. Sucho had her first menstrual period. She didn't know what it was, so she went and she asked Mina. Mina didn't know, so they said the husband went and built a little house for her by the river. And that's where she stayed until the menstrual period finished. When it finished, they wanted to mark the occasion by the first barkcloth. So they beat the first barkcloth and they rubbed it on the ground. That the red color represents the blood. And also it also references virginity and losing your virginity and creation of life. And as you see here, when they go and harvest the barkcloth the first time, an elder has to stand facing the river, referencing that original story. So the elder has to face the river to put the first incision to cut the first cut. And once she does that, before she does that, she has to apologize to the tree and said, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you. But to give an example, say, I'm sorry, I've got to hurt you, but I'm going to transform you. You'll be useful to another thing, and you'll grow up again, that sort of thing. And once he does that, that's when they harvest. In this picture, you see Japanese one are very, she's the elder in here. She's the one who put the first incision facing the river. Because when you, again, by facing the river, once you put the first incision onto the tree, you're actually acknowledging the original story. And then it's got put together. It's a collaborative work. Everyone else worked together, the women. Now, this is one of the plants used for making the dye. It's actually some scientific involvement in making the dye, because depending on how much ash you add to when you're boiling it, depending on how much ash and the time frame, how long you boil it for, it will change. It will determine the different shades of green in that space, or the red and red, and that's how they've done it. And again, the black, which is made from charcoal, the black color in Ömie culture represent the pathway to nioge. Nioge is the barkcloth. So only an elder is allowed to make to put a black paint. The juniors or the youngest one will then fill with any colors. So in this one, you can see an elder, or doesn't have to, sorry, an elder or someone who had earned the right to put the black color is the one, and then it's worked together. Again, you see Dapeni on the other end. Dapeni was one of the artists brought here that we wanted to film her story, and I'll get back to that later. This is the exhibition we had after we film and everything. The first ever Ömie exhibition in a major institution which I was part of and a curator. That's how we displayed it. Now, in determining the colors in that space, what I wanted to project or to have the viewer to experience is what it would feel like to walk under the canopy. So that's why we just differentiate. The picture does not do justice to it, but different shades with different lighting. When you walk through different room, it will give you the different experience of what it would look like under the canopy. And in that space, we had the video up there and the voices of the women. So the voices of Alban, Jonaveri, Dapeni, and Rose, Pauline Rose, we brought to do, will be singing along, filling the whole space. And that's how it looked like. Now, I don't need to go through this. That's the essay, part of the essay I did. And again, it's Lila. At that time when we did this one, she was Lila Gama. And again, as an elder, as a paramount chief, she's articulating her status by the line and the story as it is. This is an interesting story. I thought I'd include that because it's very important to the livelihood of the Ömie people as a defense mechanism. Ömie people culturally were enemies to the bigger tribe or the bigger clan called Orokaiva, and they were smart enough to use spiderweb as a defense mechanism. So what they would do is they would walk up the path towards the war zone where they would walk, and if they came across a spiderweb on the pathway, they would come back, walk around it, and can wait on the other side. And Orokaivan warriors come. When the Orokaivan warriors came in, they would see that the spiderweb was saying, "Oh, no one's been through here," so they walk straight through. Bang! That's how they would win the war. So this is why, to this day, they still. It's a story from beginning that they have kept alive, and they get the story through the barkcloth as the history recording. Sorry. Now moving forward, learning. This is the exhibition I curated at the Asia Pacific Triennial. Learning from what we learned, which I will address later, from the a lot of lines were crossed when we put Ömie exhibition on, culturally, professionally, and personally. But I will get back to that. But learning from that experience, when I went to do this Women's World, I wanted to make sure that every line wasn't crossed. And if we had to cross it, we had to communicate why and how and whatever. So we brought together a group of people women from Solomon Island, Torres Strait Island in Australia, to workshop in Bougainville. And for me, in order for us to go and do this thing, I also had to be mindful that the Bougainvillean women all came from somewhere, and they may not be mindful that there was a war that went for 10 years, and a lot of people that were bringing together may have been enemies. So we chose Nazareth Center, which is a center that deals with trauma, and that's why we had them. Now, that is the exhibition we had. We also got them to learn. We also taught them how to. If I'm speaking too fast or not pronouncing things properly, speak up. We also taught them how to not only do the work from cultural perspective, but also to learn how to do bookkeeping, or train them how to do a little business. Hopefully one day they can go into that space. And this is the exhibition we had. And I'm proud to say my cultural daughter was there. She's never danced before. Sorry to embarrass you, my daughter. She's never danced properly before, but on that day, everyone was there and she was dancing. And I'm very proud of that. Thank you. I'll come back to that. See, the relationship between contemporary and cultural in terms of museum context or art context, I am challenged by the word contemporary when it comes to the Pacific art form, when you curate or when you're dealing with Pacific art, because the biggest challenge I face is when you look up the meaning of contemporary, it says art made now by living people, by living artists. And when it comes to the Pacific, we have Melanesian country, which is Papua New Guinea, Solomon Island, Vanuatu, Fiji, and New Caledonia, who are still practicing the art form that has been passed on and who choose to use the medium that was used for generations. Yet when it comes to institutions, they would think that it's cultural. So again, it contradicts the term contemporary. And when it comes to contemporary, automatically we think, oh, that's Polynesia, Samoa, Tonga, Maori. Again, what it is informing me is that when I think more about it, what it's telling me is that by us putting this into categories or boxes, you're telling me that I, as a Melanesia, I have a past as far as 1960s. I don't have the future. Or what is it informing me as a Polynesian, my sister from the Polynesian countries, you don't have a past, you have the future. Now, culturally, we come from a culture that says the present is informed by the past to see the future. So what you do is you honor the past, your ancestors, by putting them in this space, but you also have to prepare it for the future. And while you do that, you have to put your signature, make your mark that represent your generation. So again, what we as institution need to do, or those who as we move forward, we need to look at how we interpret the word contemporary, or do we need another terminology to use that? So I'll leave it to your imagination. Again, sorry, Liz. That's what I see, and I have our own story. That's the ugliest shot of me. I've got the longest chin. I love it. Again, when it comes to engaging with how do we engage with museum and collections, I think it's very important. I think it's also very important for us to, as I say, museums to a Pacific Islander or First Nation person of somewhere, the mentality we have is they took our stuff and put them in storage. And rightfully so, we have the right to feel that way. What I'm asking is, we need to go and breathe life back into them. So we open it up to people to come and see. Having said that, you also have to be mindful who you invite in, because a lot of those things are restricted to cultural people, because a lot of these things are related to the land, connected to the land, and land. We may not be millionaires in monetary value, but as landowners, we are millionaires. That's how I'd like to see it. And the museum in Melbourne invites elders to come in and have a look at the collection and speak to the people. And thank you, Liz, you started that journey. It's now going forward. Thank you. Now, I've selectively chose these ones to show, because remember earlier I said a lot of lines was crossed culturally. Now, when we went to do this show, the first line, the three top pictures are elders, which we brought in to be guiding the younger generation, and doing it appropriately, and also be mindful of, yes, I'm an elder, I also have to give a bit of space where you can come in and create your space, make your mark. And down here, here you can see me cooking something. We were preparing the dye for the capes. Now, everyone was allowed to come and witness the beginning, but when it came to the last bit, we said, this is the part where it's signatures to my to my clan and the two clans that are there. So we had the two elders from the two main clans in Papua New Guinea, which is in Bougainville, which is the Nakaripa, which is the wildfowl or the bushfowl, and the Nabuan, which is the eagle. So we had the two elders from that one to guide us through to cut that space and protect the space. We released what we needed to release, whatever we kept back, and also to show that not only did we introduce the culture, it was not all about culture, also introducing the modernism, how you document things and how you do things, and this is training. Now, moving forward, what is a living museum? From a Western perspective, you can say a living museum is a social anthropological museum. And from a cultural perspective, our culture, wherever you create something, is your museum. It's where you pass. In Vanuatu, they call it Nasara, which they go and they learn, initiate people. The word they have in Vanuatu is Nasara. In my language, and also my daughter here it's either called Poporiana or Chuhana. It's where knowledge is passed on. And from a living museum perspective, in this context, I'm going to speak more on what is this living museum as in the Living Museum of Logan. Now, the Living Museum of Logan, which when I started, this was it, and I was the only staffer. So from here to what it is now, and what we said was, unlike the normal museum that has a collection, we don't have a collection. It's about creating a space where people can feel safe and feel free and feel they belong to come and tell these stories. And then whatever you have, you take it back with you. But we have a digital. So this is the building part of it. And the first exhibition, we have a dedicated First Nation space. And the first dedicated space, if you look at it, we have all the languages in Australia, in Queensland. And then we thankfully had Kevin Rudd's apology and all the statement as a mark of respect. We had them. And then here we had the first ever exhibition, which is called Snapshot. People of Logan feeling proud of the fashion style, because Logan, outside of Logan, it doesn't have a very positive connotation. So what we try to do is get people to come in, feel proud of who you are and place you feel you belong, and not to forget the history of the butter factory, because that used to be the butter factory. We also acknowledge, also commissioned an artist to do a timeline interpretation of what the museum used to be, what the building used to be as a butter factory, which is now a museum. That was the first exhibition, and this is what it is now. I have the Katokakala, which is a residency. I developed a program where we bring in residency, and I said it's not a proper residency program because I don't know what the future kind of residency will be like. So what I've done is I'm getting the first one, this was the first one, the second one, and the third one, and then we'll collate everything and see where we went wrong, where we need to improve, and where we need to drop off. And that's the second one. The one on the left, Big Voice, is Children's Art Matter. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Barbara Pisatelli. She, over the last 30 years, has worked with children to give them a voice. So she's worked with people from Australia, Taiwan, and China. And when I selected this exhibition, I mean, it's from the State Library, I wanted to showcase the Woodridge, again, concentrating on Logan to make them feel that they have something that they can be proud of. And that's why it is. And also not forgetting the beginning or what the building was like, the space there. And this is one of the spaces that we use as a performing art or meeting. It is what it is now today. Now, to sum up, how we go? Okay, to sum up, I'd like to touch on cultural safety. And I'll give the Ömie exhibition or the Ömie, Art of the Ömie as an example. Remember earlier I said a lot of lines were crossed. There was a time I got told that we couldn't go to Ömie to go and do the film because we would be endangered. So I said, how come? Because at that time, I don't know if you heard of the film Avatar. The film Avatar is actually based on Bougainville copper. And I had a bit of anonymously did a bit of advising on that one. So after that, I then went and worked on there was a film that was supposed to be shot in Kokoda Trail. And I was pitching to Hollywood actors, and they were going to go there. So the question I said is, these people are well known. We are not. Now, I'm from that place. I'm sure we can be safe. We got all know. So we brought the artists back to Australia, and we shot we filmed them at Annandale Gallery. Now, as you heard earlier, the first barkcloth is based on menstrual period, if I may use that. At that time, when we came into the space, I could feel something was not right. So the Ömie artists, Daphne and Pauline were, even though they're cousins, they didn't speak. So Alban Sare is also Pauline Rose's brother-in-law. So there was a lot of, you can sense decay. There was something in the air. So we then went and did the filming, and they did not stop. It was only when they decided to have lunch, Pauline said, Mama Melbourne, as a mark of respect, she couldn't call me by name because even though even Daphne Chonaveri, as an elder, much older than I am, she couldn't call me by my name. So she referred to me as Mama Melbourne because I lived in Melbourne at that time. Mama Pauline said, Mama Melbourne, could you please wait till everyone's gone? And when everybody went up, I said, okay, you tell me. And when she got up, I saw blood running through her. I said, kneel back and you wait here. And he said, culturally, when you have your menstrual period, when a woman has her period, she's not allowed to be near barkcloth or near a man. And I went back and I remember David was standing. I put my hand lightly on his hand and said, excuse me, David, do you mind? And he just swung his hand and that swung my head backwards and I could feel the pain. So all I can remember is everybody just turned it back. And David just went and held on Pauline's hand and dragged her to the toilet. And all I could hear is Pauline saying, Mama Melbourne, talking master, no can hold him hand below me got sick moon. Which translates is, sorry, Ömie Tambo, which translates is, Mama Melbourne, could you please tell this man, I've got my period, please don't let him touch me. And that was the end. I think, if I may say this, Drusilla Modeska has released, he wrote in her book, Drusilla Modeska in her book titled Second Half First, she talks about a curator and a cameraman. I can reveal that I am that curator she's talking about. She's written a book about it. I wrote a song about it. That's how I've dealt with it. Anyway, fast forward. Again, when I say that was one of the lines that was broken. Another thing was these three people have never been to a city, let alone a small town. NGV or the National Gallery of Victoria sent me a couple of days earlier on a Sunday to come and meet with them because they thought if they had a familiar face that would be with them. When I got there, I rang up and I said, I'm here. They said, sorry, we're taking him to the shopping center. When they went into, we'll come back and see you in the afternoon. I got a call to say, sorry, we've taken Daphne to the hospital. What happened to see a doctor? What happened is when she walked into Westfield, she got a shock because light and everything. So the next day, we were supposed to meet with them at New Guinea Gallery. There were chairs, and when I walked up there was one chair short. And I said to the person there, I said, can we have one more chair? Because curator is coming, my boss is coming. And I got told, you will sit on the floor. That's where you belong. And that's where I sat. Why did I allow that to happen? I allowed that to happen because I didn't want anything to happen to this artist, because they were living with someone that brought them here. And I said to them, could you please not refer to them as Master and Mrs. Let's call them by the name. And they said, no, this is what we got told to call them. Moving forward, we then put up this exhibition at the NGV. Unfortunately, David Baker, who brought this artist here, passed away 2 weeks before the opening. So we thought it was only fair that we bring in the family. So the family, we brought in the widow and the daughter. And as we took them in, the daughter, Kate, just fell into my arms. So I was hugging her. She basically, the mother just comes and wanks my hand, get your fucking black hands out of my daughter. And I said, okay, that's okay. And I said to Kate, love you, just take care of yourself. I could have reacted badly to that. I didn't, because again, if I reacted badly to that reaction, it was not fair on her as a mourning, as a grieving widow. But most importantly, if I didn't break the walls, I would hate to think that the generation coming after me would still go through that. So my whole aim in this space had been just to pave the way so we can come in and be part of that. And that's a cultural safety that I'm hoping that we as people from now can look forward. And it works both ways. Me as an elder in the community, I tell my people, or the people that deal with the diverse community, not necessarily Papua New Guinea, but people, the new ones that are coming, to say changes are now happening. Credit should be given to all parties who want, from the white or black, if I can use that term, that they're wanting change. So we're all coming together to make a difference. Another thing that I would like to see, looking forward, I would like to see is we are now in a space where there are, I don't like using multiracial. I use mixed parentage. Mixed parentage meaning we have, some of us have parents from somewhere, and I would prefer to use that. And we are now in the space where we have mixed parentage. For a Pacific Islander in Australia, they are known as Pacific Islander. When they go back to the Pacific, they're known as Australian. So where do they belong? So this is where we need to, we now need to come together, work out where we go from here. How do we make a safe space for these kids to truly be themselves? And the question I ask is, why should a person, an artist that has Pacific heritage and European heritage, why should he or he be made to use a black culture or a Pacific culture and not acknowledge her or his European heritage? Does that mean, and the question I often ask the artists, if you're going to use your black culture, if I may use that, does that mean you love your white parent any lesser? And the question, so the suggestion or my view is, we need to now allow space for these kids to pick whatever suits them in both cultures and create something to move forward. Having said that, we also need to acknowledge that this is where we've come from. You have to speak to them, gain respect, gain information with respect to create something where you move forward and we can all come together as one and move forward. And I think I'm going to end here. Before we go to questions, I'd like to end with a quote that I have carried with me from as a child till now. It's something my parents had always told us. Knowledge is power. Communication is an art form. you just have to choose a time. So everything has a time and a space, or space and a time. So you need to choose your subject, you say it and how you say it, relating to that. Most importantly, you have to do it with respect, because if you don't, then nothing will happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Oops,
Well, people asked for,
I did very well without crying.
and you did perfect with time. So people want museums to be truth-telling spaces. So there's some truth-telling for you. It might not have been what you were expecting, but this is the subtext, the background in which all of us work often in this space. Things are changing. Things seem to be changing fast sometimes and slow other times, and there's backward steps. And I think we all need to work in a culturally safe space where we're respectful of each other and each other's backgrounds and what we bring to the table. And I, for one, would like to apologise for what happened to you in that time, and having learned those stories from you in producing this exhibition up here, I was very aware of that subtext, and it's very painful. And I really appreciate your honesty in this setting. We are inviting questions. Sana, if you're happy to ask questions, we will bring the microphone around because we are recording. But yeah. Thank you, Sana. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. That was, wonderful and really lovely to see your trajectory through the other world of art rather than science. I wanted to ask you about your ICOM work and how you see the International Committee of Museums working towards these kinds of ideas that are going slowly through the world, but how do you find your place there?
Thank you. Again, without saying too much, because I'm also mindful as a member of the ICOM, I need to zip up a bit. But for me, I tend not to zip, because I come from just before I answer, I come from a generation that still suffers the ripple of colonization. Therefore, it means I only speak when I'm spoken to. But for me, no, I'm going to speak when I feel it is right for me to speak. To answer your question, I don't know whether I can answer it properly, but I will try. ICOM, there's a program that I have developed over the last, I was part of the developing it. ICOM, I think, is trying to make the changes, but it's very hard because original ICOM is based in Paris. And in Paris, they have, and in France, they are set in the old, I think they're more anthropological minded and old style. Slowly we are making a change as international, ICOM International. I think this year or last year now, there was a conference that happened a couple of months ago, where they were looking into ICOM International to include Australia, even though Australia is well advanced in that. So we're now finally in Asia and Africa. And one of the things that they're now looking into is getting the people more engaged in having they're looking at cultural knowledge as based. It's something you cannot learn in university. You have to be brought into that. So now they're looking into that space where, how do we incorporate this? How do we work with this to make something out of it? And as I mentioned earlier, the last 4 years I worked with ICOM International to develop a program whereby Pacific region may not have, some have galleries, some have museums and galleries, others don't. But what's lacking is how to run them. So the program that we will be running is bringing them here into places where they train them to be how to run admin, curating, or bookkeeping, that general thing. And September this year or later this year, again, without saying too much, I got told that we're going to develop the program, going to implement it, and I said, hang on a minute. A lot of programs was implemented away from the Pacific or First Nations spaces have been developed with a view from what we think it should be. So how about we create something, we go and say, this is what we're offering. What do you need on the ground that needs to fit into this box or square? And to be mindful that not everything will fit in the square, have an elastic. I tend to use the term elastic boundaries because elastic to me, you push it hard and you say the wrong thing, it will come back to once and hit you. That's why I use elastic. Did I answer your question properly?
I've got a loud voice, but I better take this off. Sana, I was thank you for your talk. It's been fascinating, but I was interested in your distinction about the definition of contemporary in relation to the traditional work, which is still going on. And then you talked about mixed parentage. And it just occurred to me, and maybe, maybe you can't answer this, in terms of that, do you see perhaps down the road a synthesis in terms of the mixed parentage between the contemporary traditional and the contemporary European? How do you see that working?
I'll try and answer it. Sorry. I will try and answer it, whether I have the correct answer, but I will try. We come from a culture that's evolving. The medium may change, but the foundation is the same. So having said that, as long as the current generation to move forward, because I don't think the culture will be the same as it was when I was growing up in the 60s. It has already changed. But what I'm hoping that will happen is that whoever is practicing in this medium, and they're already doing that, a lot of artists that I see, that they represent the culture that suits them and consult with those that are actually entitled to the knowledge. And I'm hoping that with that in mind, that both, I don't know how to answer that. I'm trying to think of the way to answer it properly. Sorry. No. I think it's a good question because we also need to bring it to the table so we work out. We can have this conversation, and out of this conversation, we will have something that will actually come out in the end that can serve the thing. My advice would be, if I were to give an advice, that the cultural knowledge be respected. That whoever artist, and this is what I advise the artists that I deal with the whole mixed parenting, that whatever you deal with, whatever you want to appropriate, that you know that you come from the lineage that actually privy or that have access to that, or has ownership of that knowledge. And how do you do that? You can consult, and if the answer is no, then you choose another medium. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sana, thank you for the talk. And could you tell us what we could look forward to for Pacific Art here in this coming year?
There is a lot of, actually, there's a lot of Pacific artists that are now that have now made a name for themselves. The challenge we have in Australia, if I may say, that is a lot of Pacific artists, not just Pacific artists, but Pacific, artists in general who from Australia. The challenge they have here, my observation had been, the challenge we have here is opportunity inside the institution to make something. So a number of them have gone overseas, create a name for themselves, and then they come back. And for the Pacific space, one of the things that I see as groundbreaking and actually pays more homage to the culture and the region is Asia Pacific Triennial. And I wish we could have that more everywhere. And it doesn't just have to be confined to Queensland. Also, having said that, I think what the current generation, the new artists with mixed parentage are lacking is support from the elders, because they don't have access to the elders. And my experience had taught me as an elder within the Pacific community in Melbourne is we as Pacific elders, we tend to forget that we are now in Australia. So when the kids come to here, we expect them to fall in line. And what I say is, hang on a minute, that might be the right thing to do, but we're not in the Pacific now. Because it is hard as a Pacific kid or an artist for that thing for that matter to create something for them. And it is hard for them to survive out there, because out there is already challenged. And when I first started in this field, I used to say for a European artist, an Australian artist with European heritage, you can almost say it's a given thing. But for anyone other than that, unless you as a Papua New Guinean, if you did painting, you said, no, that's not Papua New Guinea. It's where's your carving, where's your weaving. So having that was 20 years ago. It now changed, and again contributed to changes coming to all sorts of parties of the Western and the cultural thing. And I'm hoping for the future that we as elders, for the survival of our culture, we can guide the young ones to operate in a very respectful manner, that they can actually appropriate what belongs to them and what's not, we leave it. The challenge we face as elder now is, as a cultural knowledge holder, as myself, going through my full initiation to be the knowledge holder for my clan, is the challenge I'm facing is, do I take the knowledge with me to the ground, or do I pass it on, or who do I pass it on? Because cultures was passed on through initiation in a special time. We are now all over the place. The person who's going to inherit from me lives in Papua New Guinea. Her daughter is supposed to live in Germany. So how do we do that? So we now have to work towards finding a space where we can all come together for the survival of the culture. How we do that, it needs a lot of conversation from everyone and anyone. But all I ask is it's done with consultation, with approval, and not misappropriated. I don't know if it makes sense. Yes. Mm.
I think, Paul, that's a good end, a good note to end on. Powerful note. Please join me again in thanking Sana for her honesty and her truth-telling around her experience in museums. We have so much to benefit from your knowledge sharing, and I, for one, feel very privileged that you agreed to speak today. And thank you. Thank you.